In this video, you will hear from Gary E. Brown, author and editor of All at Sea magazine, about his experience of writing out a Category 4 hurricane on a mooring in St. Martin. Gary lived to tell the tale, and his boat suffered almost no damage in this amazing story. Stay tuned all the way to the end to hear my thoughts on whether such an action is a good idea. Subscribe to Sailboat Sailing so you can see the stories that matter to cruising sailors and see our round-the-world sailing adventure. You mentioned that you rode out some storms, maybe Category 1 hurricanes at anchor with your wife.
No, we rode out Hurricane Lewis, which was Category 4, and also Hurricane Lenny, which I believe was a 3 or 4, and all the other ones between those, which we rode out, were minor, 1 and 2. So let's focus on Lewis, perhaps, and Lenny, which might, if they're ever in the same situation, shall we say. Lewis came off the African coast with its sights on St. Martin right from the get-go. It almost was on rails. We used to gather in what was then a lagoonish bar on the side of the Simpson Bay Lagoon, and of course there was no internet then, no updates and no smartphones. So we were glued to the only television that we could have access to in the bar, which they loved because we all used to drink, and that was watching the Weather Channel from the US. Well, they were on the Weather Channel raving about how beautiful and compact this tropical hurricane was. We were all getting ready to face the thing, and it was on rails. It came within 4 or 5 days out. We knew it was coming to St. Martin, so we had to prepare. Fortunately, our boat was on a big mooring, and I went down, I dove, and I put anchors to the mooring, and then I put out, I think we had the mooring, and 2 anchors to the mooring, and 5 anchors from the bow, and the anchor lines went everywhere. I had one that went round the base of the mast, and 2 that were looped back to the primary winches. We stripped the boat of everything we could take off. I even dropped all the halyards. It had a wooden mast, so all the halyards were external. So we dropped them because the windage on the halyard is tremendous. It doesn't sound, you wouldn't think it would be, but it is. So we dropped all the halyards but one so we could get back up the mast to replace them. We stripped everything. There was nothing on deck at all. Dinghy down, deflated, everything. We prepared to face the storm. Like I said, 1,200 boats in the lagoon. Some of them had 1 anchor down, some of them had 2. Some left up their roller furling, which is an absolute killer. Some left the dodges up. Many people got off the boat. My wife, she went to stay with some friends. We managed to communicate with a handheld VHF. And at that time, I had a single sideband radio, which worked for quite a while. And the storm Lewis came, I think it was a 4, I think it was gusting 5. And the problem with Lewis was it hung around, not like the one we've just had, Irma, which was quite quickly over with. Lewis hung around for 12, 14, 20 hours, full force, full on. It was a massive hurricane across its breadth. We were behind what's known as Mount Fortune in the Simpson Bay Lagoon. It's known by everyone as the Witch's Tit. The anchors took the strain, and the first anchor that did work up to about 70 knots was a fisherman anchor on rope, and that thing held for hour after hour after hour. While when I looked astern, behind me, boats were dragging, boats were tangling, boats were sinking, the furlers, the rope, the sails were unfurling, the masts were coming down. It was absolute chaos. And of course, once the wind shifted, as it always does when the hurricane passes, we had to face the full onslaught of the wind. Fortunately, I lost 1 anchor. The rest of them held, and the mooring played a big part in that too. But the biggest thing, and I can't stress this enough, is chafe gear. You must stop things from rubbing, and you must allow some movement if you're fastening to the stem head or round the mast. You must allow for a bit of movement in the chafe gear, but that is absolutely imperative. Lewis was so strong that when at its height you could not go outside. I did try to go out every now and again to look up the anchors, see how they were up on the bow or wherever, and it got to the point where you couldn't breathe because you were breathing water. Even the mask and snorkel didn't help. You couldn't do it. You just had to hold on and knuckle down and hold on. But yeah, so some boats did survive it. Our boat, Dryac, the only damage she had was the mast. She had 22 coats of varnish on the mast at the start of the hurricane, and by the end of the hurricane, it had been sandblasted clean. And at one part, it looked like someone had taken a razor blade and run it down the front of the mast and grabbed the varnish layers and peeled them back like a banana. So that was our only damage. And after the storm, I managed to be able to transmit on the ham bands and give a few reports. I wasn't supposed to be on the handbands, but the hand people allowed me to transmit so that we could get some information out of the island because, like I say, no internet then and no smartphones, no communications whatsoever. But yes, it is doable. If you can find mangroves to go into and tie into, all the better. But more and more islands now are stopping people tying into the mangroves because they don't, the mangroves damage, people are thinking green. You just have to find your place and read the books and listen to people, do your best, and if you're not feeling up to it, get off the boat, take your valuables with you, shut the boat down. You've done your best, check your insurance policy, get in the dinghy and go ashore.
Can I ask you, what were you able to do on the boat during the storm that helped your situation?
Tend the lines, first of all, up to a point. But there did become a point in Lewis where you simply could do nothing. In the early part of the storm, you can tend the lines, or I could. In a one, it's dangerous out there. A lot of wind, and again, things are flying. Coconuts do a lot of damage. But you can tend the lines. But if somebody comes into you, runs into you, drags into you, and a lot of the damage in Lewis was caused by boats not properly secured, dragging into other boats, tangling up. Some of the boats went down in knots of 4 and 5. They just broke each other apart. The anchors dragged, they tangled. The roller furled, sails unfurled, and they tangled. The mast tangled, and they just pounded each other to pieces until they sank. But there are a few things you can do. I did hear stories of people managing to fend for the boats up to a point when it got to a 1 or 2. They could just go out there and cut them adrift with a big knife if they were tangling up. Did happen, it can happen. You need a whole lot of luck.
So I've never been out in hurricane force winds on a boat. There's a lot of storm force winds in squalls, and I've been in some squalls where I could not see without a mask on. How did you wear a mask or a snorkel? Were you able to breathe?
What?
And
are we talking about in the hurricane?
Yeah, during the hurricane that you were just describing when you were tending the lines.
No, you can't breathe. Once the wind gets to a certain point, it picks up the surface of the sea, the ocean, the lagoon, whatever. It lifts it, it rips it off, and it blows it horizontally, and you can't breathe. It's almost impossible to breathe because you breathe in water. Mask and snorkel help up to a certain point, but at a point you can't. It rip your teeth out. The wind rips the mask off your face. The only way to move is to crawl along the deck and pull yourself along on the stanchion basis. Once it's got to a point where that's unsafe, you just have to go below. Shut everything up, go below, lay in your bunk, grab a bottle of rum if that's the way you feel, say a prayer, think nice thoughts, and hope it will pass soon.
The storm you just described what's the name of it?
Hurricane Lewis.
Lewis.
L-U-I-S.
All right.
1995, September the 5th, remarkably, almost the same day as Irma.
For the hurricane prep, you were on a mooring, and you put anchors off the mooring. So were they anchors going from the bow of the boat to the bay, or were they?
No.
Okay.
The mooring was a big concrete block.
Okay.
With a chain shackled to it to a riser to the boat. That was the mooring.
Mm-hmm.
I went down to the mooring, I dove on the mooring, and I led I shackled a chain to the shackle on top of the mooring on the seabed and ran an anchor out from the mooring out towards where I thought the worst of the wind was going to come in a V shape. So I laid 2 anchors shackled to the mooring in a V shape on the seabed to support, so the mooring couldn't be dragged out of the ground.
You've seen evidence of the concrete moorings getting dragged out in the past.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, for sure. In a tropical storm before Lewis, we flipped our mooring. It dragged it about 10 feet and flipped it. So the shackle was then on top, underneath. Well, after we reset the mooring, I then anchored it. I anchored it with these 2 chains and anchors. So he couldn't, you had to drag the anchors before he could drag the mooring. And that was, it didn't do that. It secured it. And then I ran 5 anchors out from the boat, from the bow of the boat, just like you normally anchor. I ran 5 out on long walk, way out from the boat, 300-400 feet from the boat. And they were shackled to lengths of maybe 60 or 70 foot long chain. Anchoring, there are books on anchoring which are really, really good and give you all the details. But just, if you think you've got enough out, just double it again. I mean, you can't have enough. You can't. I mean, you just can't. There's also a school of thought that says that putting out so many anchors is wrong. It's seamanship. We can debate seamanship forever and ever. I know people even now who will run out one huge, massive anchor, one, way out, massive. And they rely on that, and sometimes they get away with it. Huge anchor, huge chain, huge length of warp. and they get away with it. And the reason they don't want to put out more anchors is that other boats who are coming down on you, drifting, if they're dragging their anchor and they trip one of your anchors, or hook onto one of your anchors and your anchor still holds, they then turn round and drift right into you and start smashing up your boat. So I have no definitive answer to how you should really, really do it. But for me, personally for me, put everything out, everything you've got, and double it, and more, and more, and more, so the boat can't move. That's for me.
Gary and I have different opinions about how you should prepare for a hurricane. And I fundamentally disagree with Gary's view, but I know it's a view out there and he has interesting stories to tell. My view is that your boat is nowhere near as valuable in human terms nor in economic terms as your health and well-being and the health and well-being of your crew. I also believe that the forces of nature are oftentimes stronger than you can counteract. And I run my boat accordingly, that I try to avoid strong weather. So it is my belief that it is a fundamental mistake to stay on your boat during a Category 1 or 2 hurricane, as he talks about in this interview. But he's done it several times and lived to tell the tale. So you can imagine that my risk tolerance, given I created a channel called Sailboat Sailing, is less than of a lot of other sailors who would like to push their boats a lot faster. Subscribe to Sailboat Sailing, hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss a video. We feature the stories of the most interesting sailors of the world, ripped from the headline stories of sailing disasters and our round-the-world sailing adventure, where we go from New Orleans through the Panama Canal and across the Pacific. So let me know what you think. Do you think that it's irresponsible to stay on board a boat during a hurricane? Do you think it's a good decision? Put those down in the comments. Mantis aimed to design the most reliable anchor ever made. Other anchors often cannot set in firm or grassy bottoms, endangering your safety. The Mantis frequently sets the first time even in the most demanding situations. We sleep a lot easier using the Mantis anchor as our primary on the Sailboat. Get yours at mantisanchors.com or other fine retailers.